Hi, my name is Jeremy Jimenez, and this is another chapter review for chapters 9 and 10 of business law class. So, yeah, let's get straight into this. So, in chapter 9, it was all about contracts, and 10, basically all about contracts. A contract is a legally enforceable exchange of promises between two or more parties. And there are different types of contracts. There are actually like six different types of contracts in the chapter that they list in chapter 9. So firstly, there's express and implied. And at first I had a very difficult time like deciphering them because I thought they kind of like sounded the same thing. But an express contract is an exchange between parties of oral or written promises. And the first thing I thought of this was kind of like if you want your grass cut, you can call the grass company or the cutting grass company, and you'll give them your address. They'll give you a fee, and you tell them that you'll be able to pay this fee, and that they'll make that promise that they will cut your grass. So this is kind of an express contract of there's not a written official like form of a contract or like a legal form, but it's kind of that trust between the two, the customer and the the business and the buyer, that they will fulfill the needs that you want if you pay them this amount of money. And then implied contract is a contract established by the conduct of the parties. So an example of this would be like with a written lease agreement. Say your lease has expired and the tenant keeps on paying the monthly rent, and the landlord will keep accepting it. So it's kind of like, even though the lease has expired, I'm still paying this and you're still accepting it, so then you can still live there. So it's kind of like that's the implied contract. There's the unilateral, which is an exchange of a promise for an act. Unilateral, sorry, unilateral. And then there's a bilateral, an exchange of one promise for another. Those are kind of self-explanatory. There's a void, so a contract that is a formation that has an illegal object or serious defects. So I just think of that as like a loophole in a contract, in the void. There's a voidable, which is a contract that gives one of the parties an option of withdrawing. So then if something's wrong with the contract, they can withdraw from it, and there would no longer be any, they will not be held accountable for their needs of that contract. And this I thought was a great way of leading to chapter 10, which talks about discharging of a contract, which we'll talk about later. So there's in the chapter there's classifications of contracts. So then it's like kind of like valids, like meet a valid contract, which is a contract that meets legal requirements. The whoever made it or supervised it, their license are up to date, stuff like that. Everything is fine. Everything checks out. There's executed, which is terms have been performed. So like in the contract, executed means that they've done the work that they said they would do, or that they signed up to do, and that now they were done and they can leave. Unenforceable, which is the contract exists but cannot be enforced, and this can be different types of factors, like someone's license hasn't been up to date or something like that. There's different types of things that can affect that, but even though there is a contract, it cannot be enforced because the requirements weren't met. And then there's a quasi contract, which is a court imposed contract. The court did it, and it's not between, say, like two parties. It's under supervision of the court or by law, which can't be enforced. Now, transitioning to chapter 10, which is all about, no, not changing to, I forgot this part. So in making a contract, there are steps to making this contract. There's type classifications of contracts. Now this is how contract is made. So you have the legal offer, which is someone offers them this contract, and then the legal acceptance, whether they accept the contract or not. They must present the contract to the other party, and they must accept it in order for it to be valid. This is one of the things that say like, and where I just said that unenforceable if a contract was made and the other person did not even see it or was not presented to him. It cannot be enforced. And the consideration, or it's like to think of it as bargaining. So in a contract, there's two parties. Each party has needs, so that they have to take the contract that is being proposed to them and consider it, whether it's liquidated versus unliquidated. And liquidated is when the whoever's being proposed as contract, there is no issues, everything is fine, everything checks out, so it's liquidated. Unliquidated is the opposite, which is um, there are problems, there's something that they don't like that needs to be changed, and that's all in the going back and forth in this consideration process. There's the genuine assent part of the contract, which is whether or not it's free of fraud. So there's a lot. I'm sure there's a bunch of contracts that are being made that are not in like good, good intent or completely legal. You can't really make a contract doing illegal business and then expect it to be enforced. So whether or not this is genuine assent, which is free of fraud, and then there's a step of whether the parties were competent when forming this contract. For example, if the person who was signing the contract at the moment was intoxicated, then cannot be enforced. If insanity, so if they have mental issues going on at the time, that would be something to get out of that contract. And legal object, which is unlicensed providers. Going back to that, if this contract was provided by unlicensed people, then the contract can be invalid. All right, now we're going into chapter 10 and talking about discharging. So there's different ways of discharging a contract. There are there's like five ways. So discharge by performance. This is when you're doing what was asked, you fulfilled your job. So you can get out the contract by doing what you said you would do. Simple. There's another way of trying honest effort. So like you said you would do this, but you had an honest effort. You did what you could do, but the terms were you couldn't complete it. So you couldn't fulfill it. Then you can be discharged. There's material breach. So if you get injured by fulfilling the contract, then you can probably sue the person that wanted you the contract, stuff like that. But if you get injured, then you can get out the contract by doing what was asked. Discharge by mutual agreement. Both parties agree that this contract can be thrown out. Simple. Discharge by condition precedent and discharge by subsequent. So this is basically like determining a contract that's based on an event or based on whether an event will happen or will not happen. And precedent is whether an event must take place in order to fulfill this contract. And subsequent is if this event took place, then it cannot happen. In my head, I thought say hurricanes, say like in the contract, if like in terms of a hurricane or a natural disaster, then this contract lights turned off on me. Then the contract would not be valid if, let's say, like a hurricane or a tornado came through and wiped everything out. That's what I thought of it would be. But yeah. Discharge by impossibility. It's kind of self-explanatory. The terms are impossible to do, then you can't do it, so discharged. And discharge by commercial impracticability, which is in your part, you try to go about the things that you said you would do in the contract, but it's unreasonably expensive. So yeah, that pretty much sums up chapter 10 on ways to get out of a contract or discharged. And yeah, I feel like in reflection to my career, if I'm going into the business, there's going to be many contracts, work contracts, different types of contracts, and I need to make sure that I know the steps of creating these contracts, going about these contracts, and signing my signature on these contracts, and not being and being able to know what I'm getting into, and if I'm getting into, say, like, whether it's genuine assent, if the contract I'm signing, whether it's actually like legit or I can be getting scammed. So this could definitely help me. All right, thank you. See you next one.